Hello and welcome to yet another episode of FortiGuard Live. I'm Derek Mankey with Fortinet's FortiGuard Labs. Joined with me as always is Amar Lakhani. Amar, you are looking super today.
Hey, I feel pretty super. Good to be here, Derek.
Always great to talk to you. And as I say every episode, we can go 24 hours, without talking, and then it seems like it's like a month of activity has changed, right? And there's no exception since the last time we talked. So let's clear the elephant from the room here. Obviously, half NIM, all this activity happening with Exchange. Seems like, we were getting one of these large, what I would call a high profile, campaign and event that typically have, these different multiple phases of the attack framework, the kill chain, such as, reconnaissance, weaponization, a lot of the steps that go through basically APT groups. On average, if we look at a 10-year track record, we're getting about one of these per year. Now this seems to be accelerating when, SolarWinds hitting, late Q4. This is on pace for about one a quarter now.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as impact goes, this is absolutely like a SolarWinds attack, like a WannaCry attack from a couple of years ago. This is big impact, affecting lots and lots of people and organizations globally.
Yeah, definitely. And, what's interesting is we're continuing to see more of these campaigns, more things that have multiple wheels in place. There's good news, bad news to this as always. Let's focus on the bad news first. So, the bad news obviously is yet another big campaign, a lot of issues that follow. There were, we looked at some heat maps. So basically we pulled up our FortiGuard Labs telemetry based off of the signature work that we did for the coverage on the original Exchange vulnerabilities. And, good news, part of that is that we've been a long-standing partner with Microsoft MAP, the Microsoft Active Protections Program, since 2005. So we already have these trusted channels set up for early warning so that we can actually release and monitor these intrusion prevention signatures. And it was interesting because there definitely is a demographic here. I mean, looking at our data that we pulled up from FortiGuard Labs, the vast majority of the exploit activity, I should say attempted exploit, because these are blocked, that we saw was primarily the USA and Canada. So very North American heavy.
Yeah, I mean, that's not surprising. I mean, first of all, Microsoft released a patch. Anytime Microsoft releases a patch, attackers are basically game on. Let's try and develop exploits. We already know organizations have a very difficult time patching. Now, all of a sudden, Microsoft releases an out-of-band patch. So we're already off cycle. Like organizations already haven't planned for that downtime. What do they do? Most of them just probably want to wait until their next downtime cycle to patch. But when there's an out-of-band patch, it's important, and they need to attack it right away because that's what the attackers are doing, is they're attacking it right away. And as we saw, we started seeing attacks probably happen in the US and Canada first. I'm sure a lot of people thought that there could be high value targets out there, but no one is safe globally. I mean, we started seeing spread of really every continent, every country.
Absolutely, definitely. And these out-of-bound patches are quite special cases. I think if history has taught us one thing on that is this isn't going to be a 14-day window. This is here for a while. The good news is, of course, that patching is happening. I think more, because of the high profile nature of this, there is more urgency for patching now, which is great news. That's something we always talk about. But again, if we look back to, I remember working in our labs in 2008. That was an out-of-band patch when Configure broke, right? The vulnerabilities, it's an RPC service. And Configure was still around 10 years later for one of those critical out-of-bound patches. Good news is I think more patching is happening frequently, so that patch window is the amount of patch devices is growing, the holes is shrinking, but that still doesn't mean that attackers are going to let up. And we saw that with DeerCry following on the heels of these vulnerabilities, right?
Yeah, absolutely no surprise. First of all, we have a vulnerability. Exploits are going to be developed after a vulnerability. I mean, it's as many people were saying when the Exchange vulnerabilities came out, wait until the other shoe drops. And that's exactly what DeerCry was it was that other shoe, because we had the vulnerability, we have the way in, and now we're going to see the attacks. It almost reminds me of something like a riot when that happens, right? You have people in a city all confused, and then all of a sudden you have property being destroyed. That's the actual, exploit part, right? You have, something taking advantage of the problem that's out there.
Yeah, in a sense, it is definitely it's a trigger, right? It's definitely a warning sign that there is going to be more to follow. And keep in mind, right, that this isn't just, obviously DearCry is a more prominent, because it's ransomware, a more prominent case that has been leveraging these vulnerabilities. But this is not limited to DearCry, right? A lot of times people often associate one campaign with one set of vulnerabilities, like that we saw with Exchange. In reality, there's always going to be copycats. There's going to be as many people, especially now there's also proof of concept code has been released. So there's going to be more people now leveraging this, right? And we've seen that already with crypto miners as an example.
Exactly. And I think DearCry was taking advantage of one vulnerability that was released from Microsoft, the proxy login vulnerability. And as you said, that exploit code is out there. It's been on a lot of public forums. A lot of people are going to start taking that, modifying that. There could be a lot of other exploits using the exact same vulnerability or a combination on all of those vulnerabilities. If one vulnerability probably works, probably the other ones work as well, as I'm sure.
Yeah. So let's switching to the good news. The good one thing I'm seeing in the industry, as these become more frequent, the industry as a whole is actually becoming more cohesive, right? It's becoming tighter because we're actually doing, we talk a lot about the collaboration work that we're doing, fighting together against cybercrime, to be able to respond to this. There are more stakeholders stepping forward, I would say. And, the good news is that people are listening to the mitigation advice too, right? I mean, just the fact that the patches are happening quicker is one thing. Looking at our heat map data for DearCry, when we looked at it at the start of this week, about 3-4 days into the DearCry campaign, we saw relatively low volume for the ransomware hits with DearCry, the actual payload. And a big thanks to that, because these IPS signatures are already in place. Patches are being done. IPS signatures are already in place that are actually blocking those, the exploits before the payload, i.e. DearCry, can be delivered.
Yeah, I think that's important to think about. So as you said, DearCry, first 3-4 days, everyone's talking about it. It's in the media everywhere. Big deal. And we're not seeing that many attacks. Well, why aren't we seeing that many attacks? Well, for the attack to be successful, they have to take advantage of the vulnerability. We've already are detecting that vulnerability. We're stopping that vulnerability. Obviously, specific conditions have to be met. But if the vulnerability is patched or if it's stopped, then the attack is not successful. And we've been saying this about patching all the time. I think some people just miss the fact that, hey, for the attack to work, for the malware to actually execute and to get on the system, you need a carrier, right? You need some sort of content delivery network for the malware, and that content delivery network is usually the form of taking advantage of a vulnerability that's existing.
Yeah, classic example of the kill chain, but this is the good news. Again, as an industry, we're getting better at that kill chain. That kill chain is strengthening, especially with our fabric. If you look at it, I mean, there's multiple layers that we can add defense in here to protect. So just like we said before, it has to get to that point of malware trying to be delivered, to the system. I think it's really, it's happening quicker, and it needs to, from a defensive standpoint, because again, if that's not happening at speed, those numbers are going to be a lot higher with the DearCry payload as an example.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing that you mentioned is I want to point out how researchers are working together. Their attackers are almost forcing us to have better processes.
Yeah.
I remember even a few years ago when I was sharing research with other organizations outside our own organization, outside FortiGuardLIVE. The process was emails, calling someone up, figuring out what we know. And this has happened so many times where we have to just share research to third parties and even receive information from different parties. Now we're starting to have a very good process. We know how to respond to it. We know how to basically get all hands on deck. So I think that these attacks are forcing the industry, the security researchers, to work together in a much more efficient way.
Yeah, Cyber Threat Alliance, another great example, right? We're a founding member of them, and there's 33 members now in the CTA, all working together, and when events like this break too, like Hafnium, it's no exception. There's an algorithm intelligence committee and group, and more people putting skin in the game, which is just awesome to see. I completely agree. I think as a result of that, our processes are becoming, in terms of the collaboration team, more fine-tuned. It's great. So we're over a year into the pandemic now, and it's no secret that everybody's tired after a year into the pandemic. We've talked in the past about the threat from everything from OT being targeted to obviously the COVID-19 lures. We track that on a weekly basis, and it's continued to steadily decline up to a very small amount now of COVID-19 lures that we're seeing 3 months into 2021 now, especially compared to Q4 and especially in Q3 last year. Now, a lot of the trends that we talk about are still the same. We're seeing a lot of traffic to online shopping and e-commerce sites, and a lot more web traffic, application traffic, and so forth. But when it comes to the social engineering lures, I think that cyber criminals also got tired. They know that people are tired, and they're switching gears as we expected. But we're starting to see some new lures, right? So there's a very popular lure that was being used last year, which was similar to scareware in a sense, right? Where victims would get an email claiming that they've had their webcam, basically their computer owned, their webcam compromised, and that they have video of this person that they're going to release to friends or coworkers or families, basically extort them unless they pay a certain amount of money in cryptocurrency, right? People, I think, started to. I know when that wave first started to happen, a lot of people, felt. I would say that they are susceptible to that. They didn't realize that it was it's pretty effective. They didn't realize it was a phishing scam. They had some fear, right? Because that's what they're trying to do, is to instill fear in people. But again, after a while, that effectiveness started to drop off. So now we're starting to see attackers use a new lure, saying that they've actually compromised their new not social media, their new video conferencing platform that they're using at home, using a zero-day exploit. And that's more believable to the user because guess what? In the new work from home environment, people are using video conferencing platforms every day, right?
Yeah, everyone's using a video conferencing platform. Like, webcams, like back in the day when, that attack was more prevalent, still we had like a certain group of like more technical people using webcams, right? You had, gamers, you had like, some IT staff. But today, everyone in every industry is pretty much using some sort of video conferencing meeting, right? Web meeting, because that's how we're doing business in the pandemic. And we have all heard of things on the news where, someone forgot about a meeting being online or a public meeting. I hear it all the time. Hey, someone didn't know they were being recorded, or some meeting got out to the public that wasn't supposed to be. So it's on top of mind right now for a lot of people. So they're thinking, hey, this is possible. And they don't even think like, I didn't even do anything. Like, what's the point of this? They just think like, oh my God, what is the possibility? You start thinking the worst case scenario, and they get scared, and attackers know about that. They're taking advantage of emotion like they always do. And of course, 99% of the time it's a scam. They have absolutely nothing. They're just hoping that you'll pay up.
Yeah, trying to instill the fear. And I think even with when we finally get the pandemic behind us, this is going to continue because it is this new normal, this hybrid environment they're going. There's still going to be very high usage of these new applications, including the video conferencing platforms. It's similar to the classic watering hole attacks that we talk about, where they know someone's going to be doing a certain amount of activity every day, whether that's browsing social media, using a video conferencing platform, or going to their favorite site. Of course, watering hole attacks target people on that site when they're going to the site, but it's really a new flavor of that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so at least we're starting to see some of these new lures. I think there's going to be more innovation on that. Good news is we haven't seen too much yet in terms of it's tax season, in terms of tax scams or lures or phishing attempts that are happening, or vaccines. Or now, of course, we have the stimulus checks in the U.S. as an example. Nothing really popping on that yet, but definitely something to watch out for, I think, right?
Yeah, kind of surprising. It's kind of been a little low from what I've seen from a volume standpoint. Doesn't mean it won't change any day, right? It doesn't mean there's not other people experiencing high volumes in certain regions or certain contexts. But right now, I think that's good news. But it's also kind of worrisome because it makes me think, why aren't they doing that? What are they so successful at? They don't even have to worry about what's on top of mind, like tax or stimulus checks coming out.
Yeah, definitely. It's just always good to have that front of mind, I think, right? I mean, there's going to be more. We every week we release our threat intelligence brief. I know we do podcasts on that as well. And the last intelligence brief, as an example, with the Bazaar Trojan, this is the lure it was using was PDF documents with bonus payments. And of course, when it wasn't an actual PDF document, it was a link to a website that claimed to have PDF documents. And again, these are doing everything that would say not to do. They're following the, in an attack scenario, would follow the link and then click on this file to download supposedly their bonus payment document, which of course was actually just straight up executable, right? So those sorts of things still happen, and I think definitely everyone needs to continue to hone their skills to catch these things.
I gotta stop that. I filled that document out like 50 times. I thought I was gonna get a 50 times bonus. Just joking. Like that, those doors actually work really well because people don't think about that, right? They're like, oh, you get something popped up. Like, I'm sure everyone listening to this like broadcast, they're probably multitasking right now. Someone's probably looking at their phone. Someone's probably texting. They're probably listening to their boss. We all multitask. And that's when attackers take advantage of something, is they know you're a little distracted and they're going to take advantage of that. Just like everyone's doing right now in the world of like working from home and video conferencing. And that's the danger.
Yeah, and it's also because of the remote nature now too. If you think of like where these would be coming from, HR as an example, they're not in that same physical building where they can walk down the hallway and say, "Hey, thanks for the bonus payment," or "Can I get more bonus payment?" Right? Again, they're physically away, so it does take away from that identity management aspect of it. Absolutely, yeah. All right, a lot of stuff to talk about as always, Samar, but great points. I think everyone has to stay vigilant on this and understand all these lures. There's going to be more to come for sure. Thanks for joining me again, Amar.
Hey, always.
All right, this is Derek Menke with FortiGuardLIVE, signing off.